Okay, thank you very much, Madam Chair, and I do appreciate everybody who is helping with this meeting. It's been a little while, but you know, we're still moving forward with these virtual meetings, and hopefully we'll give the opportunity for even broader participation. Um, uh, there is a full agenda today. There's a lot going on the transportation side in Hunter Mill District. And I see as some more folks have joined in as attendees, hopefully everybody will find this very helpful. And as always, if there are items that um, aren't addressed here or that you think should be on a future agenda, be sure to contact either my office, Shamli, or Catherine, and we'll look to get it on the next agenda. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay.
Oh, actually, no, you're right. You're on your phone. Sorry. Let me do what you asked me to do, which is our first speaker. And by the way, I will point out, I will be participating for about 45 minutes or listening. And then I'm an alternate director of WMATA. And today, the primary director cannot attend, so I will be signing off to join the WMATA meeting a little before 9 o'clock. But in the meantime, let me turn it over to Tom Bashadny. Tom, thank you so much for everything you do, but also for being on this call today.
Thank you, Supervisor O'Connor. It's definitely a team effort. We have several folks from FCDOT here today and many others back at the office working on rest and transportation issues, Hunter Mill District transportation issues. There's a number of items here that I've been asked to talk about, and so I wanted to jump into that real quickly. The first one is the Fairfax County Parkway at Sunrise Valley Interchange and the potential impact on Polo Fields. And so wanted to just give everybody a little bit of background. The Board of Supervisors initiated a study of the Fairfax County Parkway, the whole parkway, which is about 35 miles, including a portion which is called the Franconia Springfield Parkway. And as part of that study, there were multiple rounds of public input. And the idea there was to look at what's in the current comprehensive plan and decide whether or not that makes sense for the future, because most of the recommendations for the parkway that are in the comprehensive plan are probably 20 plus years old. And so that work has been done. And back in the summertime, June, July, the board did adopt in principle those recommendations. For Polo Fields specifically, there was not a change that was made other than to say that that interchange at Sunrise Valley Drive and the Parkway should be context sensitive and should recognize that there's homes very close to the interchange, into to the Parkway and the future interchange. So the effort that is going underway right now is the prioritization of all the improvements on the Parkway. And so county staff will be coming back to the board in early 2022 with some information about how to prioritize those future improvements. And then based on that prioritization ultimately adopted by the board, there'll be two things that will happen. One, there'll be a comprehensive plan amendment that is initiated, and then the other is that we'll be looking for funding for to actually build those improvements. So at the moment, there is no funding that's been allocated to the interchange project at Sunrise Valley and Fairfax County Parkway. There's a little bit of money, about $500,000, that's been allocated to a intersection improvement on the east side, the east approach to the intersection, or actually I guess it would be the westbound approach. So coming from Reston Parkway to the Fairfax County Parkway, that interim project will add a turn lane there to make that approach a little more efficient, which will help the entire intersection. But in terms of the long-term project, which is the interchange, there's no work that has been done to design that or to figure out what the impacts are. However, as staff, we recognize that we want to avoid any impacts on the residents on the west side of the Parkway. So that's really the extent of where we are with that right now. Should the board prioritize moving forward with it, and should we find funding, there will be a significant amount of public outreach that would be part of any design process for that interchange, and we would want to get as much public feedback as we could, recognizing that there are residents that live very close to that location. So Supervisor Alcorn, Chairman Martin, I'm happy to either continue on or take questions depending on what you would like to do.
Tom, let's try this, and either Catherine or Shamli. I know there are several attendees actually who live in Polo Fields, and somebody may have Mark Malcolm, who knows how to use WebEx, has his hand up. Let's go ahead, Tom, and see if there are any questions, because one other thing, and I think Markham's probably going to note this, this is also an item that's under discussion in the Reston Comprehensive Plan update.
And I thank you very much, Supervisor Alcorn and Mr. Bajadni, very much. The question is this has had multiple estimates over the last roughly 5 years, and there's been some discussion, but what would be helpful, recognizing everything that's been said, there should be some kind of early tentative planning of a potential design of this GSI that would help allay some fears or for a number of people who are involved with and live close to this intersection in Polo Fields at that particular corner. Very much appreciate the incremental things that get done, but it's getting an idea of timeline of when you will choose to do community engagement is important to at least let these residents know. Polo Fields, as part of Reston Association, is like any other single family home area. It doesn't really have a citizens association to get the word out, and you get all sorts of things. I try to be helpful, along with several others who are attending this meeting, to inform neighbors to keep their perspectives in reality, not wondering what's going on. So anything that you can say, be helpful. There'll probably be a couple of other attendees who can elaborate further. Thank you.
So in response to that, I think what I would say is, once we've talked to the board about prioritization, which will be in early 2022, we'll get some sense of what the board's priorities are. We're going to make a recommendation to the board. They can tell us they like it or they don't like it. We'll get a sense if this is one of the top projects that's going to be moving forward in the medium term, or whether this is not in the top 3, top 5 projects, and it will be a longer term project. So at that point, we can probably give you a better idea of what the priority of this particular project is versus the other improvements on the Parkway, and then you'll have some sense of the timeline. But because there's no funding for it right now, my guess is it's probably a minimum of 5 years out before we would really be starting design of any kind on this project, and it could be much longer than that. But we should have a better sense of that, first quarter of 2022.
Thank you kindly.
Thank you, Mark. And I see Lynn Brown. Lynn has her hand up. Go ahead.
Thank you, and thank you for the update to Tom. I think part of the disappointment for our community with this is the junction change, whatever it may be, was accepted before there was any community consultation. So essentially, it's a consultation on something that's a done deal. It's only the design of the junction which is actually a question. I think, you know, we've attended numerous meetings of things like the RNAG, this committee and various others. So we've been led to believe that the junction will be a spewy, which we can see doesn't really work in the circumstances at all. And we've had FC.dot tell us that there will be eminent domain issues. And yet we're still at the point of saying, well, there's no design work yet, we're 5 years out. But the very fact that it's already in processes means that potentially people who do searches to buy our homes are going to see that come up. So it potentially already has home devaluation issues for us. And our past experience is that it's not responsive. There was a whole line of trees that were both a visual barrier and a sound barrier on Fairfax County Parkway, which were removed. We spent more than 12 months trying to get a sound barrier installed, and it was refused on the basis that there was no substantive change. So, you know, the plans are widen the parkway to 3 lanes, which will again have an impact, put in a junction, which will have slip roads, which will have an impact. And yet to date, we're saying, well, it's 5 years out, don't worry about it. Frankly, 5 years is nothing. So I think we are worried about it.
Well, what I would say is there's no design work. That as part of the multiple rounds of outreach on the Fairfax County Parkway, there was a attempt to look at one possibility there, but that will be definitely reevaluated as part of any effort to do a formal design for that interchange. So nothing has been approved. The board isn't actually making any changes to that. The current comprehensive plan includes an interchange there and has for more than 20 years. So there's no change that is being made there from what has been in the comprehensive plan for 20 years. And until we get funding to actually move forward with the design, anything else is speculation at this point. And it's not, when we get into a design for a project, we often find that it changes dramatically from what people thought it might be going into the project to what it ends up to be. And in this particular case, there is language in the comprehensive plan that says the design needs to be sensitive to the Polo Fields neighborhood and avoid impacts to the neighborhood. And that's what we will do when we get to the point where we're doing design. There will be land acquisition, I'm sure, for the project. So, you know, that for any transportation project that we do in Fairfax County, even from the smallest sidewalk project, there's typically land acquisition. So, but the extent of that land acquisition is something that would not be determined until there's pretty significant design work done on a particular project.
Tom, thank you, and thank you, Lynn and Mark, for your comments on that. This is something I'm paying close attention to, and certainly looking at the language in the comprehensive plan and how to make sure that Polo Fields is protected to the maximum extent possible. And I realize they're competing demands here and their time frame issues here, but Lynn and Mark, yeah, look forward. I did commit, and I will have a public meeting specific to Polo Fields issues as part of the comprehensive plan review for Reston. Once the task force gets through with their activity, that'll be scheduled, and make sure everybody knows about that. I don't see any other.
Hi, Supervisor.
Yes.
It's Jose. Rick Hamilton sent me through the chat. He's having some issues raising his hand, but wanted to make a comment.
All right, Jose, you're the master at this. Whatever you can do, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh,
All right, Rick.
it's
All right.
Urkel. Good morning. There have also been discussions about widening Fairfax County Parkway. Tom, is there a schedule for that?
No, that'll be part of the prioritization effort that we'll be bringing back to the board in the first quarter of 2022. So there are, I want to say there's 10 interchanges on the comprehensive plan for the Parkway between Reston and Springfield. And then there's the widening of various segments of the Parkway. So all of that is part of the prioritization that's underway right now. But I would tell you that probably the interchanges are probably where you get the most benefit in terms of traffic congestion by eliminating traffic signals. That's not to say that widening of the Parkway at certain points might not rise to the top of that prioritization, but until we have that work and have had a chance to discuss it with the board, there's no widening projects other than the portion between Route 29 and 123 that's already funded, that's moving forward right now.
Earlier in the year, I can't remember which meeting it was, there was some kind of schedule information presented, including a statement, I believe, that essentially said that the grade separated interchange construction would not start until 2038. So we have had dates put out there, but we're really, then we don't hear anything for months and months and months.
Well, if 2038 is the date and we have no money for it, you're not going to hear anything different because there's no work there's nothing that has changed in the last 6 months on that particular project, and nor will it until funding is approved, and that is probably at least 5 years out, if not further out.
In the original studies, there were estimates of traffic congestion currently at the interchange location, and I believe at the time there was an estimate that the interchange was going to cost $400 million, and at the end of that there would be essentially the same congestion numbers that we are seeing projected, already. Can you comment on that? Is that?
No, I don't have the cost information in front of me today, so no, I can't comment on that. But that is part of what we're looking at in terms of preparing a proposed prioritization for the board. If there are projects that are more efficient and provide better benefit than others, then those will rise to the top of the list. And if there's projects that don't provide, we're not going to spend $400 million for no benefit.
And then one final question.
Move the project forward.
I'm sorry. One final question. So, as I said, there were traffic studies done and intersection delays or waits, if you will, at the stoplights and so forth. That was pre-COVID. And of course, we've seen dramatic changes in people's work situations, including a lot of people working from home. And at least from the people I've talked to, which has not been very many, but they're suggesting that they may continue to work at home even after COVID is in the rearview mirror. Are we going to revisit all those congestion numbers and redo all that based on a reality that may be changed since the original study was done?
Before any specific project gets into design, the first thing we do is revisit all the traffic numbers. So yes, and I don't think any of us really know what the long-term effects of COVID will be. There clearly is some indication that there will be increased telework continuing even after the pandemic is passed. And so that will have impacts on particular transportation projects, whether they move forward or not move forward, or what moves forward. But all of that would be looked at once a particular project is funded and there's money for design.
Okay, thanks.
And,
Catherine, yeah, I just want to keep us on track on time. That was agenda item 1 for Tom, and like with the end of his time, but I do want to make sure everybody knows we have an extraordinarily full agenda. So let's try to keep this as brief as possible so we can get through everything, because some of this stuff is very important.
Okay, so do you want me to move on to the WNOD Bridge project? Okay, so I have good news on the WNOD Bridge project. The land acquisition for that is expected to be completed in December of this year. And we will be submitting for our construction permit for that project in January of 2022, so after the first of the year. Dominion Energy has finished their relocation of the power line there. And so we do anticipate seeing construction start next fall, and it will be about a 1-year construction. So fall of 2023 is the projected completion date for that project. So things are moving along very well with that project, and looking forward to seeing construction in 2022. So yes, that's definitely good news. Do you want to take questions, or just I keep rolling from there?
Well, yeah, this isn't my meeting, but I can't help it. I see Adam's hand is up. Go ahead, Adam.
Hi, good morning. I thought originally the construction on the bridge was supposed to commence next summer, next fall. Is that pushed back now?
There was a little bit of a delay on the land acquisition process, but it's probably about a 3-month delay on the project. But it will still finish in 2023 as originally planned.
All right, thank you.
Okay. All right, so moving on to Soapstone. On the Soapstone connector, which connects from Sunset Hills to Sunrise Valley Drive, between Wheelie Avenue and Reston Parkway. The environmental document is nearly complete on that. We've been working on a memorandum of agreement with the various stakeholders that are involved in that project. They're called the consulting parties. And so we are very close to finishing that agreement. It will involve the Federal Highway Administration, VDOT, the State Department of Historic Resources, and then the county. And then the next step is to bring that to the Board of Supervisors and to the other governing bodies, which will probably happen first quarter of 2022. And then we can complete the environmental document, and then that project will be turned over to VDOT to do the formal design on that project. So we're very close on the environmental document. It's taken a while to address a variety of concerns by some of the adjacent property owners, and hopefully early next year we'll be moving into the formal design phase for that project. So that's the quick update on that. And then the question, we had a question about the status of unfunded sidewalk request. So the county, Fairfax County Department of Transportation maintains a list of any requests that we get for projects, whether they're sidewalk projects, bike projects, highway projects, transit projects. We keep a list of that. Currently, there's probably several hundred projects that have been requested. The Board of Supervisors in December of 2019 did approve an update of the Transportation Priority Plan, and that's the formal projects that have been approved. But we have a backlog, as anyone who travels around Fairfax County would know. There's lots of projects that have not been implemented yet and need to be implemented. So recently, the Board of Supervisors passed what's called a board matter, directing staff to look for ways to identify $100 million in funding over a 6-year period for additional bike and pedestrian projects, and to come back to the board with recommended lists of what projects might be funded. And so our next discussion with the board is December 14th. We are preparing information for that meeting related to potential projects as well as potential funding sources. And so depending on how that conversation goes, we will be working with the board to identify the funding and then have a process to prioritize the projects, the unfunded projects, and bring that forward to the board as well. So again, probably, I would say probably first quarter or so of next year, I would anticipate that the board would actually adopt a list of additional projects, assuming that there's comfort level with the approach to the $100 million.
And Tom, let me just jump in there. So we, in my office, Chomley is on point for helping compile a list of projects in the 100 mil district. We want to make sure that we have as complete a list as we can as we go into the prioritization process. The expectation is that, you know, this is, I would call it a down payment on the numerous pedestrian and bicycle projects that need to be done. But if there is anyone watching that it has a project or two that's very important that may or may not be on the list, be sure to contact Chomley.
Thank you, Supervisor Alcorn. So I think that is the end of my part of the agenda. I'm going to turn it over to Chris Wells to talk about the Active Fairfax interactive map and data tool, which we've gotten some really good feedback from the community. And Chris is going to tell us a little bit more about how we're going to be using that. Chris?
Yep. Good morning, everybody. Hopefully you can hear me. Jose gave me the power to share my screen, so let's see if that pops up. There we go. Y'all seeing my screen?
Yes.
Okay, good. Let's see if I can make this look better. There we go. Okay, so good morning again. My name is Chris Wells. I'm the Active Transportation Program Manager. I work for Tom in the Department of Transportation. If you don't know, active transportation is the industry term for what used to be pedestrian and bicycle issues, but now it's also you know, any form of active transportation, scooters, equestrian, so on and so forth. Brief background: we're in a multi-year process of updating what was the trails plan in the county and the bicycle master plan into one consolidated plan, the Active Fairfax Transportation Plan. Ultimately, that'll become updated as part of our comprehensive plan. There's many facets to that, but one of the most interesting facets and what I was asked to present on this morning was the interactive maps that were developed for public feedback. And so the discussion we just had about missing link requests and project requests is actually a great segue to this, because this is the latest effort we had done at collecting this information. So on this screen, you see literally a screen dump of this interactive map. And by the way, this map is still live. So you can go to our county's website, into the Department of Transportation, find the Active Transportation Plan, and find actually both of these maps. This is the barrier map, where people can go in and highlight barriers to walking or biking. And the way that it works is you go in and you put in the location, you can put in information about it, and then as you see on the right of this screenshot here, it's like a Facebook or something, where you can actually, other people can go in and emphasize that that's also a barrier that they encounter. You know, in other words, like liking it in Facebook. I don't do Facebook, but I think that's what it means. So as you can see in 100 mil, there's been quite a lot of input. Actually, it's been a great tool. There's been hundreds of inputs countywide. So again, we're using this information to inform us on projects that can be done, either low-hanging fruit, things that could be done, you know, with something simple, or that actually needs funding for a project. And then ultimately, as part of the Active Fairfax Transportation Plan, we'll be refining a prioritization recommendation for the Board of Supervisors to consider future funding of projects, taking into account, a variety of important factors such as, transportation issues, pedestrian bike demand issues, equity issues, access to generators such as transit or activity centers, schools, parks, things like that. So again, this is the barrier map where you can see what barriers people have highlighted. A parallel effort is the location for new trails and bikeways routes. This would be essentially new lines on the map for the what was the trails plan and the bicycle master plan, which will be consolidated into one map. Our county has a very robust plan in place already. Our trails plan dates from the mid-1970s and was literally decades ahead of most of the United States in developing a plan for a countywide network of connected facilities that would allow you, in the original intent, that would allow you to bike and connect the wide geographic diversity of our 400 square mile county. This map today is an attempt to allow the public feedback on updating that. Obviously, things have changed since the 1970s, so some of the roads are somewhat essentially the same, the major roads, but there's utility corridors, connections between neighborhoods that weren't made as development occurred. So, cul-de-sac to cul-de-sac that could be connected and simply open up to, two neighborhoods to each other, things like that. And so this map allows folks to go in there and highlight these new recommendations. And then from this map will be the information that will be considered in the update of the active transportation plan. Now, I should caveat that with saying that this, yes.
Chris, I'm sorry, this is Shumley. Your voice is a little bit garbled. Can you just check your mic a little bit to make sure it's not?
Yeah, WebEx tends to do that. Why don't I turn off my camera if I can? Okay, let's see if that's better. WebEx tends to hog bandwidth.
All right, yeah, that's a little bit better. Thank you.
Okay, great. I should caveat both of these maps, but in particular, this one is this is unvetted public input at this point. So this will still go through a vetting process as the active transportation plan moves forward in the county. So if there's opposition, as there always can be, to anything here from a community, that the opportunity to voice those opinions will still happen throughout calendar year 2022. But this map is at the moment an effort to receive public feedback of what are suggestions. And again, are they feasible? Are they practical? Those decisions certainly have not been made. So with that, I think, oops, up in the menu, get out of that menu. There we go. With that, I'm done with the active Fairfax plan. If there's any questions on those.
Okay, I don't see any hands up because I don't have that displayed. Are there any questions? Otherwise, we're going to go on to David to talk about capital. Is there? Yes, someone has a hand up?
Yeah, Mark Malcolm.
Mark, do you have a question?
It's more of an elaboration for this moment. What it is, two things I think should be mentioned. I know that you're accepting comments to the plan through December 10th, correct? And second, that for the safer streets, for all, you're having two community meetings virtually November 8th and November 18th. Should making your panel aware of the outreach that you're doing. The map, the active transportation plan update map is very critical, and I'll have a follow-on comment with the next presentation, but that was just elaborating. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Chris,
Sure.
was there another comment?
Well, can I add to that? And like I said, this is a multifaceted effort, and Mark is absolutely right. The comment period right now that's open was probably on the vision and goals that were adopted, which is an overarching policy guidance for the effort. The Safe Streets for All plan, the meetings that are coming up on the 8th and the 18th. That's the beginning of the public input process for that, where we have a variety of business plans that the county can consider for a Safe Streets for All program, which is similar to what you may have heard of as a Vision Zero program. If we were able to create a world where there would be no fatalities, either pedestrian, bicycles, or vehicle fatalities, that'll go through probably the spring of 2022. And then the other facet of this is the full phase 2 effort of the active transportation plan, which is related to this map. That'll continue throughout the rest of 2022 and probably into 2023. So there's multiple moving parts.
Well, they should be moving. That's the whole idea of a transportation plan. All right, Chris. We're going to go on to David. David, are you on? David Lost? Do we have David?
Yes.
Good morning. Capital Bike Share.
Yes. If I could be made the presenter, that'd be great. Okay, great. Let me share. Okay, great. So I just have a little update on our capital bike share expansion from the summer. So just as background, we had 18 new stations installed over the summer. There's one installation still pending that ended up having to get pushed back with some VDOT issues, but hopefully we'll get that in this fall. All of the stations were built in existing VDOT right-of-way, and many of them were built as on-street stations, as you may have seen. And the project was funded largely with Federal Highway Administration Transportation Alternatives Program money. So it's an 80-20 match for the project. So a lot of federal dollars went into the bike share stations. So this is just a map of the stations. The little blue circles are the new ones. So we were able to expand in some areas that we didn't have bike share really before, especially south of the Dulles Toll Road. So the ridership has been pretty promising so far. As of October 15th, we've had 2,083 starting and ending trips. There, in this time frame, there have been about 6,300 trips in all of Reston, so it's about a third of the Reston trips. And in that time frame, this has been about 20% of all capital bike share trips in Fairfax County from July through October 15th. Specifically breaking it down by month, so the first full month where any of the stations were in was August, where we had 625 trips on just the new stations, and then there were 724 in September, so that was up about 15% month to month. System-wide, we had about a 7% increase in trips from August to September. So it's just 1 month, but it does seem to be a nice indication that the new stations are growing, getting more and more popular, and starting to catch up with the rest of the system. Seeing as how we had more than twice as much growth rate as we did system-wide. Breaking it down by station. So this is just a list of the new stations so far by total rides. And I'll also note that this doesn't include certain e-bike trips. Some e-bikes in the system are now, they've been introduced over the last year or so. and they can be taken to like bike racks as opposed to bike share stations and locked to a bike rack. And so those don't always get encapsulated in the trip totals because it didn't go to a station, so we don't actually know necessarily where it went from or where it went to. But anyway, Southgate Community Center has been easily the most popular of the new station locations. So you can see them all listed here. The couple of them I put stars next to, those were the two stations that went in September. They had to be delayed due to there's some repaving and other issues that got in the way from the original install date. But so there's the breakdown of stations by popularity. And the last thing I know there've been some questions about moving some of the stations. And just to sort of run down what that's about, it's not something that we're likely to want to try to pursue in the short term. There's a couple reasons for this. First of all, the permits from VDOT and FHWA, the environmental review as well, are specific to those locations. So that is why, that it was reviewed for them to go there, and that's why they're there. And the reviews included, environmental review, safety review, those sorts of things. And in the broader sense, we're still really early on. A lot of people haven't returned to commuting. There's, been many changes in transportation patterns, and we're kind of still seeing how it's going. So, we're not exactly sure what the environment's going to look like to make sweeping decisions. And also ridership growth has been pretty promising so far. So we're pretty excited to see how the stations have been going. So just
add real David.
Yes.
This is Chris again. I will add real quick though. We have heard from Supervisor Alcorn's office that there's been some concerns about some of the stations, and we're certainly open to having us. We would suggest that we have a separate meeting on this where we actually go out in the field and take a look at this. As David said, our hands are somewhat tied. So if there's some minor changes we can do, of course we'd be willing to do that. Anything else, we'll have to see what the rules dictate, how we handle that. But we've heard that there have been concerns. We've addressed some of those concerns already. And again, we suggest that we just set up a separate meeting on site with the supervisor's office and take it from there.
Yeah, Chris, thank you very much for jumping on that. Thank you, David. I'm a big supporter of this program, very excited about it. But it's also the reality that, we're moving into some newer areas, and, I don't know if we've always gotten it exactly right, in terms of the precise location, and there are actually one or two places that might need to move a little bit, but anyway, realize there are constraints with that, but I appreciate everybody's patience as we fine tune the program and make it most beneficial for everybody. And with that, you'll probably be pleased to hear I have to sign off. So anyway, thank you, Chris. Thank you, David. And thanks everyone else. I've got to hop on the WNOD call. So, okay. Thank you, Catherine, too.
Bye, Walter. David, are you still in the middle of your presentation? Because I inadvertently skipped part of what Chris was going to say. So when you're finished, David, we'll need to go back to Chris.
Nope, that was it.
Okay.
There's one hand raised, I think, Robin Shell. If you
Okay.
want, if you would like people to put the items in chat, we can do that as well.
Oh, hi. Can I just give my feedback real quick?
If you have a question for the speaker, we can do it now. If it's a comment, we'll get the public comment at because we're trying to stick to the agenda.
Sure. So it is a question about the Capital Bike Share. So the Capital Bike Share that my husband is currently using to commute to the Wheelie Reston East from the Pinecrest neighborhood is the Green Range Drive station. And we love the bike shares. It's going to be especially great when, the Reston Metro station opens up. But there have been a couple issues, especially with the pedestrian and multimodal transportation, I guess, design of the roads, being that there is none in the Glade and the Green Range area, really. And so it just seems that the bike share was kind of plopped there before any consideration was done to, you know, designing things to support multimodal transportation. And I was wondering, you know, if there's going to be a prioritization to make that happen since the bike shares are so popular. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does make sense, and it's you raise an excellent point, and it's, you know, as Supervisor Alcorn just said, we fine tune things, and it's not always it's sometimes it's imperfect. We do absolutely consider, you know, what the infrastructure is around areas where we're going to have the capital bike share network. So generally speaking, you know, Reston does have trails. We've been very successful in the VDOT repaving program, which is how we get the bike lanes that you see in Reston. We've converted some 4-lane roads down to 2-lane roads and introduced bike facilities. So as a whole, we've been very successful in getting bike lanes, and we've built, you know, trails along Sunrise Valley. We have more trails. I actually have a presentation on the western end of Sunrise Valley of our study for the next bicycle facility there. That being said, it is certainly not possible for us to comprehensively change the entire roadway network quick enough. And so we will use the bike share usage and the bike share network as justification for prioritizing future projects. And we realize, as part of the VDOT paving program, which, if you're not familiar with it, VDOT paves roads every summer. This has been going on for 10 years, but it's really picked up pace the past 5 years. When they're paving the road, we can put down bike lane stripes if the road's wide enough, and it's essentially free or low cost. Once we have done that, once VDOT has paved all of their roads, it takes them about 10 years to pave every road in the county. Then we will have exhausted those opportunities, and we'll need to look at using capital projects to spend county money to connect the dots, so to speak, between where we've established these bike lanes. And so, yes, we absolutely are aware of the shortcomings and have that on our radar to work on over the next few years.
Okay, Chris, since I inadvertently skipped you on because you were speaking to the last item that was on the agenda, it's Tom's. I inadvertently skipped you. So you want to go back to your agenda item and make the presentation on the Sunrise Valley grade separated bike?
Yes, I will. I will share my screen, but then stop my video for bandwidth again. So that, share. Next slide. Okay. So the next thing I was asked to present on today was the Sunrise Valley Drive bicycle corridor, which I just mentioned. So on the eastern end of Sunrise Valley Drive, right now from Soapstone through South Lakes, we have a shared use path on the north side along the commercial development side. That's the first step in creating what's called a cycle track, which is essentially a bicycle facility that is parallel to a sidewalk facility, so that each user, the bicyclist and the pedestrian, has their own facility. So as development occurs along Sunrise Drive, essentially between Reston Parkway and South Lakes, the developers will do the work behind the trail that was built from, say, Soapstone to South Lakes. Our next project on that section goes from Soapstone over to Reston Parkway. Some of that's been built by development already, and we're still fine-tuning how we're going to do that, but it's essentially the same approach. We'll be looking to build a shared use path, and development activity will kick in. A different approach is going on as we study the western part of Sunrise Valley Drive. So Sunrise Valley Drive, essentially from Reston Parkway over to the Innovation Station. It's not exactly Reston Parkway, it's Edmund Haley, again, picking up west of where the development occurs. We have a different concept that we're pursuing there, and it's again a cycle track, but it's to take advantage of the width of Sunrise Valley Drive and to minimize the impacts to properties. So the idea is that we will narrow the lanes on Sunrise Valley Drive and narrow the medians to build within the roadway. My camera's off. I was making little hand motions to work into the roadway. So we would construct the first 5 or 6 feet into Sunrise Valley Drive from today's curb, but again by narrowing the roads and narrowing the medians, and that will give us a cycle track that'll be at the sidewalk level, so separated from the roadway. There'll be one-way. They're intended to be one-way cycle tracks, so along with traffic, westbound on the north side, eastbound on the south side. The benefit of this is it allows us to construct essentially within today's right-of-way and to minimize the utility impacts. Most of the utilities on Sunrise Valley, and there are huge amounts of utilities, underground utilities on Sunrise, are outside of the roadway. So by working inside the roadway, we're looking to minimize those, and of course minimizing the right-of-way impacts, and both of those minimize the costs. Additionally, we're focusing on the pedestrian environment as we do this. So in concept, that'll leave the sidewalks where they are today behind the future cycle track. But then at the intersections, we'll be doing protected intersections for bicyclists and for pedestrians. And from a traffic point of view, the traffic capacity remains the same. Sunrise Valley will still be a 4-lane road, have all of its turn lanes, at all of its traffic signals. But by narrowing the roadway, a speed reduction effect would be anticipated, because cars are no longer as free to drift around in wide lanes and to drive at excessive speeds, because the road will be pinched in on both sides. So what am I talking about? This picture here and this rendering shows that the idea of what we're talking about. The sidewalk again is parallel to a dedicated bicycle facility. This bicycle facility, because of space, will be either immediately adjacent to the curb or with a buffer from the curb. But again, it'll be raised on the curb. So I guess I should have said in the beginning, the original plan for Sunrise Valley, the entire length, was an on-road bike lane, and we've moved away in the United States. We've moved away, and in Fairfax County, we're moving away from on-road bike lanes on a road like Sunrise Valley, which is a high-speed, high-volume road. So even though I just mentioned that in the paving process in residential neighborhoods, we look to get these low-cost on-road bike lanes as part of paving, we do know that on a road like Sunrise Valley, which is a high-speed, high-volume road, that most of the public would not be comfortable riding on the road with traffic. So we're moving away from that to this off-road facility. And due to space constraints here, again, it's intended to be a one-way facility, and it'll be raised behind the curb. So in the rendering there, you see, what could ultimately be done as part of development, things such as benches and street trees and storefronts, or commercial space could be added on the north side of Sunrise Valley, where the commercial development occurs. I mentioned the intersections and how each of the signalized intersections would have really innovative, state-of-the-art best practices, pedestrian and bicycle safety treatment. Some of the elements you see here is separated crosswalks for bicycles and pedestrians. So you can see the cycle track, which is next to the road, comes to the intersection and then has its own crosswalk. We designate how the pedestrians are supposed to cross the cycle track, so with their own crosswalks. And then you can see the intersections themselves have bulb outs or truck aprons, as they're called, which gives this concrete raised area that protects pedestrians and cyclists on the corners from the vehicles. We tighten up the radius for the turning vehicles so that, again, at the intersection, the vehicles are more channelized into making slower turning movements and giving the pedestrians and the bicyclists a safety priority. This is a plan sheet. We're to do this innovative design and to do this innovative project. It's a study / concept design at this point. We've hired a firm to do concept designs for a proof of concept because so many of these things are innovative, and we've needed the Virginia Department of Transportation to buy into these concepts. And the way to do that is to actually get this on paper so that people can understand what we're talking about, and that's been very successful. We just executed a task order to finish this proof of concept design, which will include the drainage design and take a look at the sidewalk infrastructure to make sure, even though the plan is to work with the existing sidewalk infrastructure, we certainly want to make sure that it's consistent. And there's been criticism about inconsistent frontages, and so that's the purpose of the next few months of design of this. But what you see here is what we've put down on paper to date, and what again it essentially shows is, today's sidewalk is the outside envelope of this design, and we're working into the roadway where we have this space that's been previously dedicated to cars. That we can narrow down a little bit and narrow the lanes, narrow the medians, and give that space to a bicycle facility and to these intersections. So again, I understand one of the concerns was, what are the right-of-way impacts? The whole premise of this study and concept is to minimize those right-of-way impacts. Now, that being said, at intersections, as you can see, things do sometimes flare out. It's everything we do, there's always a sliver of right of way, a temporary easement. So it's not to say that there is no right of way impacts, but from a cost savings point of view and from a community sensitivity point of view, context sensitive design, we're absolutely trying to work within the footprint of today's Sunrise Valley Drive right of way. Again, this is a plan sheet of the intersections versus the picture or the drawing I showed before, and again it shows how we would have the parallel bicycle and pedestrian crosswalks, the bulb outs, the different intersection corners, how the interaction between folks are handled at the intersection, and again how we're maintaining the travel lanes and today's traffic capacity will be again the same as tomorrow's traffic capacity. So I think that's my last slide. Yep, there's the contact information. Nicole Winans on my staff is actually the project manager for both of my presentations, the active Fairfax Transportation Plan and the Sunrise Valley Drive Bicycle Corridor Study. So Nicole's contact information is there, and my contact information is there. On Sunrise Valley, again, this is still the beginning of a design process. We're not fully funded for design or construction at this point, but we needed to do this proof of concept and to get the VDOT buy-in. Like I said, we have one more design step to finalize that, and then we'd be coming back to the supervisor's office and to the public with this. But you all are getting a sneak preview of that public information this morning. So with that, I'll take questions.
I see Mark Malcolm has a hand.
Mark?
Thank you very much. With this, I appreciate the combination of several projects occurring. With that, I'm referring to the Transportation Priorities Plan first, which was 190.14 for the area of my concern, which is really Sunrise Valley between Fairfax County Parkway moving to the west, which you just addressed, and specifically up to Monroe Street. With this, by the design you're saying, you're basically having to reconstruct almost all existing concrete curbing, which is the largest cost, because there's inadequate cycle track width between the existing curb and existing walks where they exist. The issue is in 20, with that TPP, with the allocation was 5.94 million. The estimate 6.1 million. To what degree, when you say it's not fully funded, is this concept adding additional cost? My understanding was that C&I, or what would be commercial and industrial tax, was planned to be used to fund this particular project. Can you address timeline of what you're seeking to do, since you said this is in study phase, and that the TDD remove this from the project list for the area of my concern?
Sure, I know that it's hard to keep track of all this. So when the Transportation Priorities Plan, the TPP, was approved, this was still in concept going to be on-road bike lanes. And so the original cost estimate was what it would cost to do on-road bike lanes in this area. And that essentially the concept would have been, again, narrowing the travel lanes, narrowing the medians, but just striping a bike lane, so not rebuilding the curb. However, that multi-million-dollar cost was going to be difficult to defend, given the benefit cost. If no one was going to feel safe riding a bicycle in traffic, then it was going to be hard to justify why we would spend millions of dollars to build on-road bike lanes on a road where cars are whizzing past you at 45 miles an hour. So again, the best practices in the United States and in the county, we're trying to serve potential bicycle population, not today's bicycle population. Most of today's bicycle population actually does feel comfortable in the road, but that's like 1 to 5% of potential bicyclists. We're trying to reach that 50 to 60% of the population that's interested in riding a bike, but needs a more safe and comfortable facility. So that the demographic we call is all ages and abilities. So that's an 8-year-old to an 80-year-old. The concept that I just showed you, though, does not quite reach that all ages and ability, because truly an all ages and ability facility would be wider and be more separated from traffic. So this is a compromise to fit within what we can do on Sunrise, both physically and given the costs. So those cost estimates were, again, just for on-road bike lanes. We have developed some cost estimates for this project, but until we have the drainage, which is the next phase of the design, that'll really be one of the big drivers. But it's potentially 2 to 3 times those original estimates, $20 million or more. We've already asked for some of the federal funding that became available for some of this, and I think we might have received a pot of the federal earmark process for a portion of this, like $6 million or so. So we recognize that it is a more expensive project, but it's a project that's going to benefit significantly more people, and not just cyclists. Again, by taking those cyclists and putting them in a facility that they do feel comfortable in, then that takes them off of the sidewalks. If cyclists do not feel comfortable riding on Sunrise Valley, and I personally would not feel comfortable riding in Sunrise Valley, then it is legal to ride on a sidewalk. And so then you have cyclists and pedestrians mixing, and that's bad for pedestrians. So we often think of bicycle projects as for cyclists, but truly when we're talking about a cycle track project like this, or even a shared use path, when it's not as heavily used as these are projected to be heavily used, there's an equal benefit to pedestrians as well. So it is confusing. The original, again, to summarize, the original estimates were for an on-road facility that was certainly a different price tag than we're looking at now. But
I understand, and I greatly I greatly appreciate it. The cost estimates I had looked at were based on after it had moved from in-road to off-road, since it was the decision to move it off-road occurred in 2018, and these were later. Respect that. Also respect a very comprehensive answer that you've given, because I'm one of those that are probably in the 5%. My wife is probably in the 60%. And yes, she has high concerns with trying to ride a bike with me in the public bikeways. Also, a thank you to Shamli very much for getting this on the schedule and sharing your excitement of the planning that Chris Wells and Nicole have done over the prior months. The only question that remains open is it's been moved back to study. The planning time frame of when do you look to have execution, given the TPP had originally looked at by FY25. When do you anticipate this now? That would be helpful.
Sure. So in the TDD report, which is our Transportation Design Division, which we have time, I'll be speaking briefly to later. It's listed as on hold because that got moved back into my section, my division, because we had to develop this proof of concept. So their engineers are working with us on this, but Nicole is managing this design contract because it's still conceptual. After we finish this next few months of this design with the drainage and the sidewalks, that will move back. It will move back into our Transportation Design Division. And so it's never really been on hold. It's just been for them, it's been on hold because they weren't the lead on it. They will become the lead on it again. Until that happens, we won't have a firm schedule established. However, first of all, we had originally hoped that this would be a project that would be ready when the Silver Line Phase 2 opens. And obviously that's not going to happen. But we're certainly, the intent is to serve the stations west of Wheelie, in particular the stations even west of Reston, the Herndon Station and the Innovation Station, and to give that Sunrise Valley corridor the ability to collect cyclists east and west as they come out of the neighborhoods and go to these stations or go to the employment other activities in the corridor. So a project like this, say it moves into full design in 2022, we would still expect a few years more of design before we get into construction. So it would be likely somewhere between 2 to 4 more years before construction, before the design would finish and before construction would begin. Some of that could be a little bit faster because we don't have the right of way, the massive amounts of right of way that we would if we were trying to build a shared use path. There will still be a right of way process, but more than likely that will happen in half of the time that half or less of the time that our right of way process is. And then again, the big unknowns is the utilities. Are we successful in minimizing those utility relocations? Because we are often, we are always relying upon the utility companies to do their utility relocations. And unfortunately, sometimes there's nothing we can do to speed them up. So it's realistically, it's still a few years away, at least 2 to 4 years away, worst case, slightly more than that.
Thank you. The whole push was, if you're sticking to the TPP attempted timeline of FY25, that's the reason for the question. Thank you. I'll drop off.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chris. We're going to move on to, who is the speaker for MWA this morning? Marcia? I don't see Marcia online. Is there oh, okay. You get to be Marcia today.
Yeah, unfortunately, Marcia couldn't make it today. I apologize. So I'm going to have to fill in for her today.
Ready, go for it.
And if I could share my screen, I do have a brief presentation for you. All right. So we just want to give you folks a brief update. We did have some activity this past weekend. Start out with this nice recent shot that CRC provided to us of the North Reston Pavilion with Reston, I believe it's Reston Next is what they're calling that now in the background. But to get started here, a little update about what went on over the weekend. The tie-in was a success. This will be the last time we have to do any type of a closure at Wheelie Reston related to the Silver Line extension. We were able to complete the automatic train control system that's all connected to the main system now with Metro. So everything is connected. There were a few items that still need to be done that can be done during the nights over the next couple of weeks. And this was a cooperative effort between the rail project, contractor, Capital Rail Constructors, and Metro. I want to point out that they did submit their documentation for substantial completion. We are reviewing those documents, and we will determine whether we agree with that over the course of the next couple of weeks. It might probably be less than 2 weeks, but that is taking place right now, and so everyone should see a news update, you know, in about a week on that, if not less. And then really, I just want to kind of highlight again what we're doing here, connecting the region to Dulles Airport and the Dulles Corridor. This is a 23-mile extension. Phase 2 is half of that, 11.5 miles. Phase 1 opened in 2014, as you are all aware, and ends at Wheelie Reston East. All 6 stations, this question comes up quite a bit, so we want to remind everyone, all 6 stations will open together. There will not be a progressive opening of the stations. All 6 will be there. And once we give the project to WMATA, they will ultimately finish training, testing, and determining the revenue service date. We do anticipate that sometime early 2022, but we couldn't tell you, and we couldn't narrow it down any further than that, unfortunately. And that will be a Metro decision. This is just a slide here. I'm happy to share this presentation with you lately. This is Metro's slide that kind of walks through what happens from substantial completion moving forward. Like I said, they've submitted the documentation for substantial completion, and once we agree with that and send them that authorization, we will be in this operational readiness testing phase. And that will conclude with the operational readiness date. After that, WMATA will be in control of the project, and they can finish everything they need to do and determine the revenue service date. Just a few of the newest pictures we have of the stations nearby you: Reston Town Center, Reston Mexican in the background, the pavilion with the station in the background to the right. The Herndon station is all these stations look complete inside. They've even installed the fare gates at this point and the ticket vending machines. Innovation Center Station. One thing I want to point out with this station, a little different than the others, the picture at the upper right. This is the one station where you don't enter into a pavilion. They didn't build a pavilion because it's at grade. You can walk right into the pedestrian bridge. And just in terms of access, for those who are not aware, every station on phase 2, all 6 stations with the exception of Dulles Airport, which has a tunnel level entrance, and Loudon Gateway, which only has a single entrance, will have pavilions on either side of either the Dulles Toll Road or the Dulles Greenway. Passengers will enter through the pavilions and walk across the pedestrian bridges into the main station, and that's where they'll access the trains. The garages are all complete. Fairfax provided the garages on in their counties. There was one on the south side at where Rox Engineering has provided the garage on behalf of Fairfax. And then there was also a new station built at Herndon Monroe. I'm sorry, garage, not station. There was an existing garage that was going to be upgraded, and the new garage is open and running. I believe, I have to admit, I'm not sure where the upgrades are in the old garage, but I think they're done. Every station has, with the exception of Dulles Airport Station, has bicycle racks and lockers. pavilions for access, bus bays, kiss and ride lot, and the all essential public restrooms, which is Metro's new offering now. Just a couple of pictures here of Dulles Airport station. You can kind of see how it sort of mimics the terminal, the design of the station. Lovely, nice shot that CRC sent us recently. And we never want to forget the rail and maintenance facility, rail yard maintenance facility. And I do want to point out that this was not part of the substantial completion package. The rail yard is being built by a separate contractor, Hensel Phelps, and they will submit their own substantial completion package when they are ready. And that completes my presentation for today. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to try to answer those. Oh, let me unshare now.
Are there questions for Dusty?
Mark Malcolm.
Now, very quick question regarding the bike facilities at the phase 2 stations. I'm not aware that the Herndon station gate is electrified for bike users. Is it available at this time?
I do not know the answer to that question because that there's really nothing at any of the stations or the pavilion areas that are accessible right now.
I understand, but with that, the Herndon station has been in use for nearly 2 years now, except for that bike facility. And that's the reason I asked the question. Okay, anyway, please look into it.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you, Dusty. It's exciting. We'll eventually be seeing this metro open, won't we?
We're getting there. We really are. It's happening.
Okay, say hey to Marcia for us.
We will, absolutely.
Okay, I'm going to move on.
Have to drop off.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to move on. Let's see that I don't skip anybody. I'm moving on to WMATA. Greg Potts, I saw you earlier.
Yes, I'm here. Good morning, everyone. I don't have the share button though yet. Let's share the screen. There we go. Now I got it. So just give me a second. Okay, can everyone see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, good morning, everyone. This is Greg Potts from Metro. I'm the government relations person for Virginia. It's good to see everybody again. And Dusty really teed me up here because I'm going to talk a little bit about the Silver Line. He really went over most of this. He already mentioned the shutdown that occurred over the past weekend. I was really happy to hear the good news from him that there was a lot of progress that was made. So that's great. They're anticipating substantial completion in the last quarter of this calendar year. So that's good news. I was very pleased to hear that. And so I'm going to go over very quickly. He did show a slide that was similar to this in his presentation, but I'm going to just go over what happens once the airport's authority reaches substantial completion, which we hope is going to be very soon. So that's, this slide just is speaking to when MWA is going to do that, which we see as soon. And the next slide. So once the airport's authority reaches substantial completion, then WMATA has a period of time for testing. And so that's what this box is here. This is operational readiness testing. And there's no defined time period for that. There's no fixed duration. And during this time period, the project is still controlled by MWA and the contractor. So Metro does not control the project at this time, but we're all doing testing to get to a period that's called the ORD, which is operational readiness there. And so this is what's going on during this time period. MWA has already reached substantial completion, but we're doing testing. And then once we reach the ORD, the operational readiness, then Metro is doing what's called pre-revenue activities. And that is a contractual 90-day period. And at that point, it's essentially in Metro's hands. There's all kinds of things that we're doing around the system. We're doing onboarding, we're doing training. There's first responder training, final documentation. There's all of the marketing activities, all of the map updates, all of the push on the communications. There's a lot of coordination. Well, there's going to be a lot of coordination with Fairfax County, of course, and with Loudoun to get, to discuss everything that's going on, to get ready. So that's a 90-day period. And then at that point, sometime during that period, then the Metro Board is going to set the revenue operations date. So that'll be set by Metro. And as Dusty was saying earlier, there has not been a date set, but we're hoping to get to that into next year. So we'll all work in partnership to set the date and get the Silver Line open, which I know everybody is very ready to do. So that's really the overview on the Silver Line. Just wanted to hit a couple of items on safety. I think everybody's pretty familiar with what Metro is doing. One thing I wanted to highlight is that in the trains, the air filtration recirculates air, fresh air, every 3 minutes. I just kind of wanted to highlight that. So on the rail trains, and just to sort of baseline set that, I think at our son's school, they said that they recirculate the air in his school building 3 times an hour. So I just wanted to sort of level set that. It's kind of, it's a good thing that we're recirculating the air every 3 minutes, and that's on the trains and the buses. And of course, lots of cleaning done daily. We have hand sanitizer, facial coverings, all the things we've been doing for some time now. And then touchless fare collection. You can use your phone now to pay. Your phone essentially serves as a smart chip card. You can use an app to see real-time crowding. As far as the Metro workforce, we're doing testing. We have vaccination events. We actually had a vaccination event for our employees in Maryland last week. And we've got a partnership coming up with Fairfax County next week with the health department. And we're doing a vaccination event for Metro employees at the West Falls Church Rail Yard in Fairfax County. That's a really good partnership. And the Fairfax Health Department is going to come out and do vaccinations for Metro employees and contractors. That's a good thing that's happening there. And with the office reentry guidelines, we're, of course, like everyone else, kind of phasing in. At least myself, I'm going in just twice a week to the office. So we're all kind of doing the same thing, juggling the new reality. And that was pretty much it. I did want to mention, obviously, everybody's pretty familiar in the news about what's going on with the Blue Line derailment. Just wanted to mention it here. The NTSB is the lead investigator. There's not a lot that Metro is able to say at this point. We are working very closely as well with the Washington Metro Rail Safety Commission. That's the WNSC. They are the regional body that is the safety oversight entity for Metro, and it's composed of Virginia, Maryland, and the district. It is a tri-state oversight body, and so they have oversight over us at the local level. And that particular group ordered the removal of all of the 7000 series rail cars, which is why if you go out into the system, you'll notice that the service is not as good as it usually is. That's because the 7000 series make up about 60% of our fleet. There's 748 of them. They've all been inspected now. And so now essentially Metro is trying to get them back in service. We have to get approval with the MSC for the return to service. We have a testing plan that we've submitted to them. So that's moving forward. We've announced publicly that the service is going to remain as it is through Halloween. So that's through Sunday. And then we're going to make an announcement of what's going to happen next week. And we're really hoping to get service back as soon as possible to customers safely. What you experience right now, if you're out on the system, is 15 to 20 minute headways on the red line, and then 30 to 40 minute on the rest of the lines, unfortunately. And in the Silver Line, it's going from Wheelie to Federal Center only, so it doesn't go all the way to Largo. It turns back at Federal Center in DC. So, again, looking to get that service restored and to work with NTSB to identify what happened with the derailment. So that was what I had at a very high level, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Greg. Are there any hands up?
I don't see any at the moment.
Okay, then we're going to move on to Brandy.
Yes, and I will share a file.
I'm trying to unshare screen. Would you help me?
Okay.
Jose? There we go. Stop. Okay, we're good? All right, thanks.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. All right, I've got it up. So is my audio okay?
Yes.
All right, Officer Harita with the Reston District Police Station. I'm your community liaison officer. At this time, it's a good time to interject what public safety is doing around all of these infrastructure changes. I know in the last Transportation Advisory Committee meeting, we went over some of the specific new laws and regulations. I'll glance over them and we'll go through just a broad discussion of what public safety is doing and our thoughts on working with the existing infrastructure and these updates that we're getting. So I'm trying to go forward. Okay, here we go. Discussion points are going to be parking in Reston, sharing our roadways, focusing on bicyclist regulations and the new regulations that came about this past summer, and also traffic safety, the issue of combating speeding in Reston and Fairfax County. Just a quick fact, parking in Reston, just in your district, so far this year, there were 2,474 e-parking violations citation issued. When I say e-parking violations, this means it comes out of our fancy new portable machines that officers and parking enforcement officers can use to issue citations. So this number doesn't even include the handwritten ones that someone might have to pull out a little bit of an old-fashioned form to write up. I just don't have those stats interweaved with these. So we're probably thinking more around 2,500 or more parking violations that were issued in Reston. And of course, that includes violations such as parking in emergency zones, parking in the roadway, too close to driveways, violation of handicap zones, any of those regulations that fall within parking that are properly signed or properly marked or are just by code illegal, such as parking on a highway. Again, those parking violations consider 6 major categories. It's general parking restrictions, health and safety related parking restrictions. And for example, that could mean parking and dumping from your vehicle, parking and letting the oil go from your vehicle. So that in fact affects environmental, our environment as well, excuse me. Fire emergency lanes. We all know that parking in the yellow lanes and when it's signed that it's an emergency lane is illegal. We have people that do that, whether they want to run in or whether they end up blocking a lane. This is something we have our eye on. Any parking area that is regulated by signage, either by VDOT or Fairfax County Department of Transportation. It includes signage and direction, which says that you can park between only between 2 locations, or you cannot park from here to curb. Any of these properly signed areas are subject to regulation. Of course, objects in roadways, parking abandoned vehicles or inoperable vehicles in roadways, or this could even have to do with placing other objects in the roadway that would impede parking. And then, of course, the regulations surrounding buses and commercial vehicles parking within our district. I want to point you out again to your community resource page. This community resource page is actually off of our police department website. What we've done is compiled many of the frequently asked questions surrounding parking in our district and put it together on our police page. I welcome you to peruse the site and learn a little bit about what are the new regulations, what's considered a commercial vehicle, where you can park, etc. There's also links to the county page, which has even more robust details on each one of the parking codes. You'll see on the bottom of the screenshot, it says report parking violations. We need community members to call the Fairfax County Police Department non-emergency number if they were to see a parking violation that they would like us to attend to. Like I've mentioned before, officers and parking enforcement officers are roving around the district actively looking for these violations, but we can't be everywhere at one time. If you see a violation, if your driveway is blocked, if someone is parked where they shouldn't be and it's prohibited by signage, please call in. Just give the dispatcher all of the details that they might need to help have an officer help find the location, such as the license plate, make, model, color of the car, and of course, accurate description of the location. And that gets it in our queue to have ourselves or a parking enforcement officer dispatched to the location to take care of it. If it is a frequently seen vehicle, we may try to make contact if it's appropriate to help the community member in an explanation of why they cannot park there or what their parking is doing to inhibit other community members. Moving on, motto is sharing our roadways because we have a very mixed use community as far as motorists, bicyclists, pedestrians, etc. A quick fact, our district has experienced 4 bicycle crashes this year in 2021. And a regulation recap. Again, I went over details last meeting. Just to recap, new laws coming out this summer. We're now allowing 2 bicyclists to ride abreast, side by side, in a lane. If a vehicle cannot yield 3 feet while passing, they shall completely change lanes. As explained before, this allows a vehicle to go over the double yellow line into oncoming traffic to pass bicyclists. They are to do that only if it's safe and clear to do so. So we all have to have eyes up, little distractions, focus on driving, focus on what's on the roadway, and focus on bicyclists. And lastly, one thing that's not a change, but bicyclists cannot treat the stop signs as yield signs. So as a cyclist, let's all come to that complete stop so that we may gain situational awareness before proceeding on. Now, on the left side of my screen, you'll see some of our mottos that we're trying to get across to the public. What I always say is we must work in tandem to keep the roadways safer, and that goes with sharing our roadways. It is equally everyone's responsibility, cyclists, pedestrian, and motorists, as we are traveling on the roadways, to be aware of, to be situationally aware of the traffic laws, aware of the regulations, and to be safe while doing so. We must encourage and teach safe behavior. Often we can set good examples for new youth drivers and our peers. So I encourage everyone to drive safe, drive the speed limit, drive safe for the roadway conditions. It is going to set a good example for other drivers. And then lastly, we must strive to commute distraction free. We know there is a new hands-free law in Virginia, no mobile phones in hand, but there are many other types of distractions that you can have while driving, but we have to strive to commute distraction free and encourage this behavior. Resources from public safety side, we take a balanced approach with education, enforcement, and engagement. Of course, education is updating the community, just like we're doing today, on the new laws, and spreading this education as much as we can, whether it's through schools and up toward adults, new and youth drivers. Of course, there's the enforcement piece, which considers issuing citations and warnings to those who are not following the rules and regulations. And of course, this is to help prevent, first and foremost, fatalities and injuries and property damage. And then the engagement portion is having that open discussion, answering questions with our community, and having the discussion around how laws and regulations may affect them and how we might work together to, like I said, propagate these good behaviors and spread the educational portion as well. And moving on to traffic safety concerns and arrests, speeding. We know this is a big one. So in the middle of my box here, you'll see speed, residential and highway. I just break it up into that simply because residential areas I'm considering are your neighborhood roadways. And then highway areas, I'm considering any throughway such as Reston Parkway, such as Fairfax County Parkway, just for these purposes here. So yes, speeding is a concern on both of these types of roadways. We just discussed behavioral examples and social norms. We need safe driving behavior to remain a social norm. And that's what I mean by setting a good example for other drivers and for our new and youth drivers. We also need everyone to understand the sanctity of life that goes along with traffic safety. We can see horrible injuries coming from accidents, from people speeding, from people rushing, not following laws. Maybe they need to get somewhere quick, but we all need to understand that this can affect someone's life. And lastly, our enforcement piece. Again, I mentioned issuing citations, warnings as necessary for speeding and for any of these violations to combat it and to change that behavior. On the right-hand side, you'll see a campaign that I put together. You'll see some motor officers looking at some speed, and you'll see an example of a written speeding citation that someone was written for going 52 in a 30-mile-per-hour zone. So we are actively enforcing speed. We do have the help of those motor officers and our tools, the radar and LiDAR. So we are proactively working on speed. If you are seeing a speeding issue, please do not hesitate to reach out to the Reston District Station or whatever district it falls under, so that we can put together a speed calming plan for your specific area. All right, thank you for listening. Again, I'm PFC Brandy Harita. That is my email below. If you have any questions or concerns, please write down my email and send me over the details, and we can work through this together. And thank you for having me as a guest on this meeting.
Okay, thank you, Brandy. Excellent presentation. We are a little bit behind on the agenda, so and our next speaker has a hard stop time. So if you have questions, I'd like you to send them directly to Brandy, or we can take them up at our next meeting. Very interesting. Steve, I know you're anxious to present to us. You can take it over.
Thank you. Appreciate it very much. Good to see everyone. My name is Steve Welch. I'm the Assistant Director for Transportation and Land Use for Northern Virginia District of VDOT. And I do have a share screen here, but I want to have three items that I was asked to speak to. First is the Hunter Mill one-lane bridge project status update, or project update of the replacement bridge. So we began the construction in August 2021, and it's still on schedule for fall 2022 completion. But as you've seen, our contractor did mobilize, installed traffic control signs, and has put out erosion controls, but it doesn't appear as if there's a whole lot of work going on. And part of that is because the first thing that has to be done is utilities in the area have to be relocated. And one of the main utilities that we have through there is a water line working with Fairfax County Water. And because of supply chain related issues, they're having great difficulty getting the pipes and butterfly valves that they need from the supplier. And we're hearing that it's may take up to 3 full months before they get that and be able to continue on and start relocating that water line. Meanwhile, they did find a fiber optic line in the same path as the water line, so they're trying to get that out of the way. But you should see more construction start to take place, hopefully in the next month or two. So I just wanted a brief update on the Hunter Mill Road project, but that's where we stand. The second one is sidewalk and pathways snow removal. And I'm guessing that the question is, does VDOT do this? No, unfortunately we do not. VDOT is responsible for repairing sidewalks that have lifted due to roots that grow under the trees or crack or cause trip hazards and what have you. I'll briefly also want to share a screen that there's a shared, I guess I'll say, responsibility in the use of how we get to, I'm going to one other. We have a walkway can everybody see my screen at the moment?
No.
No, it's not coming up.
Could you try again, Steve?
Yeah. Give me one moment. Do you happen to see it now?
No.
No? Okay. Well, we have a, VDOT has a walkway maintenance, or the county has a walkway maintenance map that I can forward the address for it to Shamali and Jose, that on it shows who is responsible for what sidewalks. And generally, about, I'd say a certain percentage, maybe 30–40% are VDOT responsibility, 30–40% are Fairfax County Department of Public Works responsibilities, and the remaining percentages are privately owned sidewalks, whether they be commercial facilities, condominium, apartment, townhouse communities that are privately owned that abut the roadways or what have you. So there is some shared responsibility on that. I see Chris Wells has placed the location on the chat line there. So thank you, Chris. I appreciate that. And then the last thing I wanted to, and I'm going to try this again. I'm not sure why this is happening, Jose, but I know I was Shamali and Jose and I met a little while back at the intersection of Glade and Pinecrest to talk about what's happening at one of the intersections there. And I'm going to give this another go. I'm not sure why it's happening, but let me try. And it looks like I've got a different one.
It's working. We can see the walkway maintenance map.
Yeah, that came up finally. So give me one moment. So yeah, so I'll go back to the walkway maintenance map just to help out with seeing that for momentarily. So the walkway maintenance map, as you can see here, as I'm moving it around, very large, and as I zoom in a little bit, it's interactive. Does display, and it has the legend on the right side. What sidewalks are, in this case, the black lines represent privately owned sidewalks. The blue, as you see them in some locations, are managed by the Department of Public Works, and those that are yellow are maintained by VDOT. So if you ever have a question about, who maintains which sidewalk, if there's a trip hazard, a crack, sunken in, what have you, that can be looked up that way. But moving forward to the Glade Pinecrest intersection, as I mentioned, a little while back, Shamali and Jose and I met, and Shamali wanted to express the concerns there are about this intersection in particular. If I zoom in a little bit closer, and I've got to move a couple things around. Pardon me one second. We go down to ground level, if you will, the street view. So at this location, as you approach Glade, with Pinecrest being on the right side right here, there's an area of a stub out that was built probably decades ago with the Parkway, probably done with developments over the years in the 70s, 80s, maybe even before that, through time. But now it has reached a point where it really serves no real.
Oh, we just lost him at the good part.
No, we froze up on a state. Oh. It looks like he's having some connection problems.
Hey, Steve, if you can hear me, maybe turn off your video because you're sharing Google Maps. It's probably.
Okay, while he works out his issues, shall we start with Chris and go back to Steve? I know Steve has a 10 a.m., but let's yeah. Chris, are you ready to go over your list, and then we will go back to Steve when he gets his connection set up?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
So Jose, if you can share me. There I am. Okay. Share. Okay. So this is the project update. Unfortunately, we don't have the county-wide project list ready yet, which includes all the VDOT projects, but this is the county projects. I sent this to Shamali, so she can post this. This is it's also posted on our website. This is just the 100 mil version of our Transportation Design Division's monthly status report, which is updated monthly on our website. So in 100 mil, real quick, in the interest of time, I found a couple of things that may be of interest, things that are under construction. On page 2 here, at the bottom, Monroe Street between Monroe Manor and Dwight. That construction has recently been underway, and it's essentially 80%, 50% complete. That's a missing link about a half mile or so south of Sunrise Valley. So that means it should be, should be on pace to let people get to the Silver Line when it opens. Then moving down through the next couple of pages are mainly bus stops. So if you're interested in bus stop improvements, then down to page 5, there's at least one project that I know everyone's interested in, or some people are interested in. The second one listed there, the Clark's Crossing at Hawthorne Ridge Court project. That's originally part of the Beulah Road project, or what was originally almost 20 years ago now, walk along Beulah. We had this missing link and we were unable to build as part of the original project due to community persistence. We've been able to reinvigorate that, and that construction package has been sent to our construction division. So it hasn't started yet, but that is a major milestone, which means it should be happening soon. Then at the bottom of that page there, South Lakes, that's essentially 3 different projects from Greenskeepers to Soapstone, Whisperwood. Oh, is my video still on? I'm sorry. Hopefully you can hear me. Let me turn my video off. Greenskeepers to Soapstone, Whisperwood Glen to Ridge Heights, and Harbor Court to Twin Branches. Those are substantially completed. So the intent of that those group of projects was to build the critical missing links along basically the part of South Lakes Drive there around South Lakes High School to make it possible for folks to traverse along South Lakes in the sidewalk, because as you know, Reston was not built with lots of sidewalks. Then, oops, now we'll change page. So come on, put down. There we go. On page 6, in the middle there, the 2 Reston Parkway Dulles Toll Road ramp projects are 90% complete. Those are making trail and intersection crossing improvements on both the north side and the south side of the Dulles Toll Road. That also includes a signalized crosswalk on the south side of the toll road to get over to the Reston Heights development, and conversely for the Reston Heights development to get over to the Wegmans and the future metro station. So once that is complete, that'll add a signalized crosswalk there. And then last as Steve was previously, no, I don't think he was talking about Fox Mill. Fox Mill is always a topic of this meeting. Where did they go? Page 7, last project listed, Fox Mill. We are have a facility that's being built on the north side of Fox Mill from Fairfax County Parkway to Pinecrest, and that construction package has also recently been sent to our construction division, so that should be happening soon. So with that, I will stop on projects and just take me quick questions on projects.
Are there any quick questions on projects? I do want to get back to Steve. He has a hard stop time in 9 minutes. Are there any questions for Chris?
We have 3 hands, oh, 4 hands. Kelly Westenhoff is first.
You know, Chris, if you don't mind, can we go back to Steve, since Steve has a 10 stop, and then we'll come back to the questions. That sound like a plan? Steve, are you ready to roll?
I'm here. Yeah, thank you. Sorry about that. Figures I haven't had a connection problem the whole entire time till now. So I'm gonna like Chris, I'm gonna leave my camera off and make another attempt at coming back to this. All right. Let me see if I can. All right. Can everybody see my screen? Okay.
Yes,
So what we were talking about, or at least I was attempting to, was this is Glade. Pinecrest is up here. This is the T intersection. And this stub out area in here has become kind of a parking lot, if you will, that's kind of an eyesore. And there may be 1 or 2 cars that are even just there long term. What you see in yellow lines here is right away from for roadway purposes. And over the years, this right of way through here has been here most likely because of development that occurred decades ago. So this stub out was probably required as part of development over time and with the roadway of construction of Glade. So this stub got built, but as time went on, the area got developed. And now really there's no need for this right of way through this area beyond paralleling the roadway itself. So what a couple things that Shamali asked me to look at, which I'm doing, is I put together this sketch based on our conversations and field visit and gave this to our traffic engineering department and asked them to take a look at it. What we'd like to do in the short term, it'd be not what we want to do is put a curb and gutter across this location, remove this pavement, and then to make this consistent as part of a roadway, since the stub out is no longer necessary. In the short term, I've asked our traffic engineering department if they could put a white line stripe through here. These are larger than they actually are in my depiction, but these are the white flex posts that delineate the area as you can't get into this area, if you will. We'd have a no parking sign somewhere along here. Then the idea would be that there are people that walk and bike from this southern area, this neighborhood over here. Currently, they walk and navigate around the cars, then come over to this corner, have to step out into the road a little bit to look left, and then make a dash across the roadway. So what the idea would be to close this off to as a early stage change to this stub out. The longer term would be to provide curb and gutter and remove all the pavement. But the short term again would be then could potentially stripe off the walkway leading over to this trail so that there's a designated clear path and we don't have to, people don't have to push strollers or walk around vehicles and what have you. So I've asked traffic engineering to look at that. Longer term, again, it would be good to potentially just connect this up with, like I say, curb and gutter, remove all this. So that's something we're looking at. The other ask was that currently this is a stop coming southbound on Pinecrest and no stop in these 2 directions. one thing I will say is we cannot use stops as traffic control. They're used for unbalanced traffic intersections. And that is where there's a heavy movement in one direction and not in the opposing direction or directions. The goal then is with the stop, you allow people to take turns making the movements. But that is something I've asked traffic engineering to look at also, and that is a stop, a three-way stop here. The last thing is that also, as I mentioned earlier, when pedestrians walk over to this point, they cannot see left looking down this way to know when a car is coming. And when a car is coming, they cannot see the pedestrian. So we're looking at installing no parking back to a certain point of the sight line along this area. And also in exchange for that, I've asked them to look at, and I'm going to go wider out, if you will, to see if there's an ability between these two entrances, between this turn and between this entrance, perhaps to add back some on-road parking along this outside curve, or if there, like there is up here in this other section, to offset some of the loss of parking that's occurring there and just in general use. And perhaps there are other opportunities along the corridor as a whole. So that's just one thing that I wanted to share with you that we're looking at, that supervisor's office has asked me to look at. With that, I will, are there any questions about this before I drop this off the screen? If not, then I will go ahead and stop sharing.
Oh, I have a quick question. It's Robin Shell.
Okay.
So I'm so excited that you guys are addressing this intersection. Thank you so much. Do you have any dates to pin to anything as of now?
So right now we're looking at it. As far as what we can do, I think we can do something. I just don't know what that would be, but we are entering the cold season, so that means that most likely whatever we can do, which involves line marking at the very least, that would have to occur in the spring. But the signs for if we can do three-way stop, and the payment, that signs take generally 60 to 90 days. Again, we're having a supply chain issue even with signage. Flex posts for closing this off, and also looking at the no parking is something else that all those are signs, take generally 60 to 90 days for us to obtain the signs and then install them. So it would probably be first quarter of next year, the upcoming year, before we could implement anything. But I do want to point out, this is my sketch, just kind of delineating and communicating what we're asking to do. Traffic engineering may come up with something better, but we'll wait and see what they have. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Steve, for your presentation. I know you have 1 minute till your hard stop at 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
But we do so appreciate your presentation and your imagination for Pinecrest. One quick question though, because we've been looking at this Pinecrest issue for a long time. Is this totally off the county plan to have because I know the right of way is there for this, for Pinecrest to continue through?
Yeah, it's not on the plan anymore, Catherine.
It was taken off the plan? Okay.
Yeah.
Is there any option? Is there any option to use this right of way for a trail?
So what I would like to say is that one of the things that we do when we get to this point, and this is what we call kind of cleanup, is that we would look at going through the process with Fairfax County to abandon this right of way.
Yeah.
So basically, we would be taking the right-of-way line and extending it up parallel to the roadway, the same way you see it, the rest of this here, And this would be converted back to Fairfax County's ownership. Since it was originally dedicated to the county by the developers for a roadway, but through the time with the comprehensive plan changes and development, that's the process would be for us to, working with the county would have to go through an abandonment request to abandon this.
Okay.
So that's why I'm looking at trying to do a short-term interim that at least kind of addresses this problem, and then we'll look at the longer-term issue of abandoning this right away. And then the county can work out planning and trails and parks along that, and that otherwise. Okay?
Alternate use. Okay, thank you.
All righty. Well, thank you very much. I'm going to jump off. I really appreciate it, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time, Steve.
All right, guys. Thanks.
Okay, we're going to go back to Chris. It is 10 o'clock. I don't know who else of the presenters has a hard stop at 10 o'clock. We'll understand if you do, but we still want to have time for public comment. I do want, if Chris can hang around for a few minutes, since there were a couple of questions on his presentation. Can we take those questions now?
Yeah, I see Larry Butler. Larry.
Oh, hi, Larry.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Thanks. Yeah, Chris, just real quick question on the pedestrian improvements on Reston Parkway at the eastbound on-ramp for the Dulles Toll Road. I know they put a pedestrian refuge in the median there and so forth, and a receiving on the east end. Is there a plan for a walkway up into Reston Heights, or I'm kind of confused as to what's going to happen beyond those improvements?
I will have to get back to the group on that. The original idea was that there was supposed to be like a diagonal trail that cut back to the closest tie-in point of Reston Heights back circulation road, back alley, whatever you want to call that. And they have a sidewalk that runs along at the back of their garage back into there. But I haven't seen the design of that project for quite some time, so I'll need to follow up and see about that. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, just because it's odd, because it'll just end right there with nowhere to go. So appreciate you looking into that.
I see we have 4 other hands. So Mark Malcolm, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I put into the chat something that could be considered at a follow-on meeting or be discussed now. When an FCDOT project is done with walkways or bikeways, the consideration of the comprehensive plan for trees, the streetscaping. And with that, it's a question I had asked offline before, but wanted to be considered appropriately in the future or now, as the case may be. So look at chat, please. Thanks.
Thank you, Mark.
I see 3 other hands. Allison, you should be able to.
Great. Hi, thank you, Chris. This is Allison Grauman from the Wolf Trap Elementary Parents with the PTA. It's exciting to see progress on the project. I can see things are happening with the Safe Routes to School grant. I do want to add in that a parent was hit in the intersection yesterday afternoon prior to school pickup. And of course, this, something we've all worried about for years. And we don't know the details yet. We'll look to get the police report, but just looking at the VDOT authorization for construction is still, a year from now in October of 2022. And I just don't know where along the way if that can be accelerated. So we're not looking at, the rest of this school year and a whole other school year until that intersection has more safety features.
Sure, I'm certainly so sorry to hear about the crash yesterday. We, as with all of our projects, we always will try to accelerate them. So those schedules are in our design division are usually fairly conservative because we don't want to let people down by not making our schedules. But I can follow up with the engineers on that and see and make them aware of yesterday's crash and
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much. And I'm going to be looking into finding out more about it too. I was not able to be there.
Allison, I got your email and I did request information. That is, it happened in McLean District, so we didn't have the information right here from Brandy, but we will look into that as well to get the full report, and I'll be reaching back out to you. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Were there other questions, Jose? I thought there were 4 hands up.
Yeah, there's 2 other ones, Adam and then Robin at the end.
Adam?
Good morning, Chris. How are you?
Morning.
Just had a couple of questions. First one, I know Sunset Hills Road was recently repaved and restriped. They did not put the markings down to indicate the crosswalk that's now present at Michael Faraday Drive on the west side and Sunset Hills Road. Is there a way that can be done?
So VDOT, Steve had to get off, and I think he was the only VDOT person here. VDOT's contractors for striping, there's actually 2 different processes, and I think even 2 different contractors. The linear bike lane stripes are done as one process, and then the crosswalk stripes are done as a separate process. So it is, I don't know the details. I do know, of course, the Sunset was getting paved and striped this year. I would just anticipate that it just hasn't happened yet. They're done as separate separate processes, and maybe even separate contractors.
They did the crosswalks everywhere else along the section of road they paved. That's what makes me think they just forgot to do this one crosswalk.
Okay, so what? That's okay. Then maybe it's something different. What location is that in particular? I can follow up with them.
It's the intersection of Sunset Hills Road and Michael Faraday Drive. It's the west side of the road.
Okay, I'll follow up with VDOT. Thank you.
Thank you. And one other question about the intersection of Wheelie Avenue and Sunset Hills Road. And I know there was a study, I think, or I'm not sure if it's complete or not. I saw an accident happen there probably about a month ago. When you're going southbound on Wheelie Avenue and turning left to go east on Sunset Hills Road, that's the only part of that intersection that does not have a control arrow to make a left turn. And that's where the accident took place. Are there any plans or anything studies of looking at possibly adding a controlled signal at that turn there?
I'm not aware of anything. The only studies I know of that area is the rest and comprehensive plan. Look at all things in the network, and then also the pedestrian bicycle issues. Actually, not north of the intersection, but between Sunset and Sunrise, and the extreme width of Wheelie there, and the metro access and everything. But I can pass that on to our planning people who are working on that issue, and they certainly will have to take. The board did provide funding and carryover for additional study of that corridor, so I'll pass that on to them. They'll certainly have to, with anything they propose, they'll have to address traffic operations as well.
All right, thank you.
And Robin, and then we saw one more hand, Corinne Fields.
Hi, so I have one comment and one question. So my first comment is on the Capital Bike Share. Again, love it. But the one issue, another issue besides just overall safety, which could be augmented, is the number of bikes. So in the Green Range Drive station, it seems that there's a lot of outflow and not always a good redistribution of bikes. So there's been occasions where there's only one bike or the bike share is empty, and that's already. So I've given that feedback to the company, but I thought it might be good, for your office to hear that as well. And then my other question is, again, with the Glade and particularly Green Range Drive, So our neighborhood HOA has been in communication with VDOT about the Green Range Drive Resident Association path crossing right by Dogwood Pool. And we've been told that it doesn't qualify right exactly for a crosswalk in accordance with the current standards. But the point is that our neighborhood needs to cross the road because Pyrenees is kind of on that island that's in the middle between Glade and Green Range. And there's no sidewalk on that side of the street, but you know, it's part of the neighborhood. There's playgrounds, there's friends, people cross to use the Resident Association path to get to Dogwood Elementary and the Dogwood Pool. And so I know that these things happen when the road is repaved and restriped, but it seems like Green Range Drive and Glade are, you know, always the bridesmaid, never the bride. And so I'm just wondering if there's any way to look at that sooner or to prioritize these roads with the metro coming up, because it is right outside of the TSA. So I'm asking separately, if that makes sense.
Sure. So just to make sure I have it clear, I actually on the meeting this morning is another one of my staff, Lauren Delmar. She leads our effort at getting crosswalks out of VDOT. And the intersection is Glade and Green Range, correct?
That's the nearest intersection where the Resident Association path crosses. It's more by the Dogwood Pool and Green Range, but it's just down the way, right where that Capital Bike Share station was just installed.
Okay.
So just that kind of corner, and it's particularly dangerous because of the street parking situation. And I am a fan of street parking, but not when it inhibits, you know, safety. And there was a small child. Yeah, there was a small child who ran out, and there was no possible way that I could see this child before they were in the road, and the child couldn't see me. And I always drive very slow, so there wasn't an incident, but it was so scary. And that's not the only time. And my kids and I cross there all the time. And I just haven't been able to get, I guess, get the point across or the priority across, but it is extremely dangerous. And I'm just not sure if it's really on anyone's radar.
Okay, well, it's on our radar now, if it wasn't already. In the paving process, we do, like I said, Lauren leads a process where we work with VDOT, and VDOT's receptive to it. But there are rules for crosswalks. Crosswalks have to have sight distance, crosswalks have to have a certain number of users, and we have to have receiving infrastructure. Crosswalks have to be ADA routes, so there have to be curb ramps and sidewalks or trails on each side. But it's possible that we studied that when it was paved and it could not qualify, but I'll ask Lauren to follow up with VDOT on this location and see if there's something that can be done. I can't promise that there can be something done because of the rules that VDOT has on crosswalks, but there's sometimes also things that can be done, such as taking away some of that parallel parking, and vegetation clearing and so on and so forth. So we'll follow up with VDOT to see what, if anything, can be done there. Thank you.
So much.
Two more hands, and I know we're already
sorry.
15 minutes past.
This is David. I was just going to jump in on the bike share comment, just say thanks for pointing that out. It can be hard to keep the bike share balanced at times. And so having that feedback will be useful for just working with our contractor for making sure that bikes are spread out as they should be.
So the final two hands is Corinne and Mike McDermott. Corinne?
Hi, good morning. Thank you all so much for this meeting. My name is Polo Fields. I'm serving this year as the PTA president over at Wolf Trap Elementary. And I know Allison spoke about the incident that happened yesterday. I know our project is a little later on the list, still about 1.5 years out. And so I know Officer Harita was here this morning. I'm not sure if she's still on the call, but I just wanted to see if there's anything that we should be doing as a school in the interim that can help avoid more incidents at this intersection while we wait for more construction to be done there. I can tell you it's a near daily occurrence that cars just flat out do not stop for pedestrians in the crosswalk leading over to the school. So I just wanted to see if there's any other interim measures we can be taking or that even, like I said, Officer Harita might have information for us about what else we can be doing. And my second comment is just a huge thank you to all of you. The striping that's been done on the roadways and the bike lanes that have been added to the roadways are in use all the time by our students. In fact, we're seeing a huge increase in students riding their bikes up to school and making use of that. So thank you for the project work that's been done so far.
That's excellent. Thank you for your comments. I would reach out to Brandy. I think she's your best resource.
So so that area falls under a different police district station. So I'm having Brandy coordinate with them, and I will be happy to reach back out to you, Corinne. If you could drop I'll drop my email in the chat and you can email me. How's that?
That'd be wonderful. Thank you so much.
And we had one more hand up, I believe, and
Yeah,
that will
yeah,
be the
Mike.
public comment.
Yeah, Mike McDermott has the final word.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, just real quick to Chris, in terms of the two projects that have to do with the Reston Parkway past the Dulles Toll Road ramps, a lot of discussion in terms of folks crossing Reston Parkway to go to Wegmans and all that stuff. In those two projects that you have there on the ramps, are there any additional conversations that are coming up in terms of what's going to be done about crossing Reston Parkway at Reston Heights in terms of the Wegmans?
Yeah, unfortunately, all there has ever been is conversations. There has been conversations for probably 10 years about trying to make a better crossing there, and it has not resulted in any results. The proposals have been to install a new traffic signal there, and VDOT has never wanted to add a traffic signal at that location. There have been proposals to build a tunnel or a bridge. Those haven't materialized either. So at the moment, I'm not aware of any successful negotiations with any of the parties to add a crossing at what I think will just be a right-in, right-out entrance on that western side there at the development. But it is definitely something that Supervisor Alcorn's office is aware of, and will continue to advocate for.
Okay, thanks. I just had to ask.
Okay, thank you to all the presenters today. We're going to wrap up public comments now and wrap up this meeting. This shows us what happens when we skip the July meeting. We really loaded up this agenda, but they're excellent presentations. I appreciate everybody's hard work on behalf of the organization they represent. And if there are additional, I noticed in the chat that if there are additional agenda items that you'd like to add, that is a segue into the 2022 dates, which show on the agenda. It's January 26th, April 27, July 27, October 26. We'll continue to have them from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. There may be a point in time where we can have a blended meeting with in-person and online. That's something we'll look at right now with the Delta variant. I don't think we're at a point of wanting in-person. Really quickly, I'm just going to put my COVID coordinator hat on. We are seeing an increase in COVID positives in the county, and there are vaccines available at the main government center through October 30th on a walk-in basis, and then they're going to change their model. They have just added Moderna yesterday. The FDA has changed their rules about Moderna and J&J just this week. If you know of anybody that has been waiting for Moderna or an idea of how to get a booster for J&J, which is actually using one of the other vaccines, things are going to move very rapidly when it comes to vaccines. We're expecting children to be approved within the next 2 weeks. That's going to be about 100,000 people in Fairfax County. So the bottom line is, if you've been fiddling around waiting for your third booster, I would try to get it in the next 2 weeks because public health is very stretched right now. So thank you all for your time, and I look forward to seeing you healthy in January. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Take care.